So we are the University Models Group. Our title is sort of a cheeky Public Enemy reference that we thought might make people smile. I'm Maya, and I am presenting together with Will and Clara. So we'll hop right into it.
Hi, everyone. So we are speaking to university community models focused specifically on housing. So speaking quickly to our framing, we understand university community partnerships can take place in the context of many different things outside of housing, things like environmental issues, civic engagement, education, and more. But we're going to be focused specifically in the context of housing. And Bluestone et al. Kind of forms the grounding of much of the literature review that frames our report. And this piece outlines four different models of university community partnerships in the context of housing. The first being direct financial contributions to the production or preservation of affordable housing, which is the least common, but one of the most impactful models that universities can have. The second, employer-assisted housing opportunities, so things like mortgage assistance for faculty and staff to encourage folks to live near the university. And then direct production of affordable housing. And then lastly, planning assistance in the funding of community-led housing development or community development projects.
So we outlined in our report that we're coming from, can you hop back, Claire? Thank you. That we're coming from a pretty firm stance about what mattered to us and what frameworks grounded our analysis. We first outlined Brown's role in the displacement of families of color on the East Side, predominantly Black families, and its role in historical patterns of violence and displacement. We wanted to illuminate that the history is one of pattern and cumulative harm in order to bring attention to Brown's current development in the Jewelry District as a moment to disrupt this pattern, which would require a lot of very intentional work. One of the frameworks that Roxanne mentioned already that we used to inform our work was a desire-centered model that Indigenous scholar and activist Eve Tuck wrote about. We chose to use the desire-centered model because it highlights both the importance of a deep understanding of the very serious history of harm, and rather than pathologizing the harm, prioritizes the voices of the communities that have been harmed and their desires for the future, informing how we can collectively move forward. Second, we framed our report with the goal of getting Brown to take serious accountability for its impact on local housing, both present and past. And third, our report and analysis is justice-centered. So we're asking, what does justice look like? How can Brown be part of imagining justice for Providence neighborhoods and reimagining university and community partnerships? And how can Brown be part of housing justice specifically? And the terms that we use are also informed a lot by the Abolitionist Toolkit by Critical Resistance and Abolitionist Collective, Prison Abolitionist Collective. So we're now going to jump into our case studies, starting off with Harvard.
Sorry, so after kind of our lit review and our background, we jump right into three case studies that form the bulk of our report. The first is focused on Harvard University, specifically their 2020-2000 program. Cambridge and Boston, much like Providence and the rest of Rhode Island, are facing housing crises. And Harvard, acknowledging this and somewhat acknowledging their role in perpetuating the housing crisis, launched the 2020-2000 program at the turn of the millennium in 1999. The program comprises three components, the core of which is a $20 million investment in affordable housing opportunities across 20 years. It's a 2% 2% interest 20-year loan to nonprofit developers for the production and preservation of affordable housing opportunities in both Cambridge and Boston. And the money's designed to be injected at a critical stage of the development process, focused more on land acquisition and pre-financing efforts that are difficult for nonprofit developers to finance elsewhere. This project was a big success. It generated thousands of affordable housing units. Overall, leveraged $1.3 billion in overall investment because of the cyclical nature of the fund. So between the first decade of its existence, from 2000 to 2010, the initiative actually helped fund 17% of all of the affordable housing units built or renovated in Cambridge or Boston. And due to the program's success, Harvard decided to re-up the program for another $20 million in 2019 for the next 20 years to come. So this is a model of direct investment in affordable housing that we think Brown can emulate because of its unique financial resources in the Providence community, much like Harvard's unique ability to leverage its finances in service of the Cambridge and Boston's community. And we think that Brown can not only emulate, but really expand on the program by centering the community voices in the selection process of nonprofit developers and projects themselves.
So our second case study was the University of Pennsylvania's West Philadelphia initiatives. And Penn, similar to Brown, has a history of displacement, which one of many things includes the demolition of Black Bottom, which is a predominantly Black neighborhood in West Philly. Penn began formulating the initiatives because of its desire to, quote, revitalize the surrounding neighborhoods, which were predominantly low-income communities of color. And the university was fully committed to these initiatives and spent a lot of time in their planning and policy processes, which did highlight the importance of community input, though all of the leadership was filled by Penn administrators, and it was community input, not community partnership, which is something that we'll come back to. The initiatives were 5-pronged, and we focused specifically on the housing initiative, which comprised both of homeownership and rental housing. The homeownership half was made up of different employer-assisted housing programs that encouraged single-family Penn-affiliated homeownership and home improvement with the goal of increasing home prices. And the rental part of the initiative was similar in that the university bought and renovated rental units with the explicit goal of encouraging private investment. When they were doing the rental renovations, they said the quote, percentage was to be kept at below market rate, but the information was really vague. And there was no discussion about preventing displacement or gentrification. And the results have been just that: gentrification, or what West Philly residents call petrification, displacement, a whitening of the neighborhoods, and a loss of low-income housing stock. And we found that Penn's model was really very paternalistic, which we'll come back to.
And finally, Drexel is a recap on work that students from the previous semester have worked on and presented. So largely, Drexel has offered many community partnership initiatives. As far as housing goes, their largest project was Schuylkill Yards, which was intended to provide $3.1 million in affordable housing for West Philly. But the question we return to often during this project is affordable to who? Local news sources from around the time regard this project and say that it left a lot of neighborhoods bracing for impact. So we do want to give credit to Drexel, however, because they have tried to continue this line of community partnership and increasing communication with the community through Dornsife Center, which is intended to bring the community into campus, essentially, to offer a partnership through research.
So thinking about our recommendations and next steps, after looking at all of the case studies, one major feature that all three shared was that the models were really paternalistic. And that was particularly visible for Penn, explicitly in the language they used, but for all three is that they didn't treat the community as an equal partner, but more so a check on their plans, to check in and make sure they weren't increasing tension, but without giving really any power to the community and deciding what this would look like. And we're telling Brown to move from a paternalistic model to a justice-centered partnership that would be formally instituted and create a structure that places the community members as an equal partner who have thoughts and insights that the university just inherently doesn't, and that the partnership can and would benefit from, and ways to hold Brown seriously accountable. We believe that establishing this partnership would require serious commitment of time, resources, to unlearning the elitist conception that the university knows best, and putting in proper infrastructure to give concrete power to the community to hold Brown accountable, and also provide compensation for participation as well. And additionally, our research is building off of prior student research, and so we formally recommended that Brown implement the Eastside Reparations Plan, which is a report put together by 3 undergraduates in 2018, I believe, if not 20, yeah. And then the Housing Report Advisory Committee that Dr. Ritchie and 2 alumni proposed that would be comprised of faculty, students, Providence community members, and community organization leaders.
In addition, we recommend at least a $10 million investment, similar to Harvard's 2020-2000 program in the production and maintenance of low-income housing, recognizing that Brown has unparalleled financial resources and should be leveraging these resources in partnership with nonprofit developers to promote low-income housing opportunities in Providence. We asked that the university increase the percentage of students living on campus to reverse the upward pressure on rental prices as the studentification group outlined previously. And we do want to emphasize that this process really should be a conversation and perhaps not a strict cap, in line with the first recommendation that Maya outlined. We recognize that off-campus living can often be more affordable or more accessible, and it's critical to keep options available specifically for low-income students. But for now, we applaud the recent announcements about new dorm construction that Brown has taken, and we hope that demand can continue to be met on campus to reduce upward pressures on off-campus rent. And then lastly, we want to acknowledge that our work builds on existing research, such as the research done in Professor Bull's housing justice class. And it's our hope that the university can encourage future community and student-led research to build on this legacy that we're a part of. We want to acknowledge that our work is ongoing. For example, due to the crisis, we couldn't incorporate the perspectives of community leaders in West Philly, in Cambridge, and Boston, and gathering these perspectives is critical to creating a more well-rounded set of recommendations. So we hope future research teams can build on our work just as we built on previous research. So with that, we want to thank you. And if there's time for any questions, we're happy to answer them.